The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
In the Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, we have a right to life, we have a right to defend life.
This legislation is centered on meeting the needs of Idaho families.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
The courts have long held that our ability to transfer title on real property benefits society as a whole.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
I feel like we're back to an unappointed board that gets to decide who is essential and who is non-essential.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
And for me, it's about a couple things. It's about food security, it's about national security, and it's about preserving American exceptionalism.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Good morning, March 28, 2024. My name is Matt Edwards, and The Signal is broadcasting. We are live on the air right now in the House of Representatives down in Boise. I believe Representative Elaine Price is standing up here to debate Senate Bill 1314, which would allow the state of Idaho to hedge against any financial issues down the road by putting money into gold and silver. Let's listen into this debate. This is a bill that has been debated over many times over the years, and it passed the Senate earlier this year, and now it's in the House. So let's listen to Representative Price.
Possibly have a way. I look at gold and silver as a way to store money, and this is a way to store money and keep it from, if the dollar collapses, having a way to potentially protect our state.
Further debate on the motion. Gentleman from 5.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate in favor of the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
We talked earlier this session about teaching of Western civilization. Every major civilization, especially the Western civilizations, have used gold and silver as a means of currency, a way of storing value. Gold and silver are the perfect money system. They're rare, they have intrinsic value, they're durable, they're divisible, they're universally recognized. There are a whole bunch of states now, Nevada, Utah, South Dakota, New Hampshire, Wyoming, that have introduced gold backs, which some of the states are now using as legitimate currency in their state, which is allowed by the US Constitution. The issue of gold and silver being a hedge against inflation, gold and silver, precious metals in general, are counter-cyclical to debt-based instruments like treasury notes and CDs. Earlier today, for instance, just to talk about inflation, we were told that back in 1979 in Salmon, the high school was built for $3 million. Today, that cost is $15 million. Prices of materials haven't gone up. It's the devaluation of the dollar that we need to protect ourselves against. How many members here in this body remember 29 cents a gallon gas? You don't have to raise your hand. I know a bunch of you do. I see the good-looking gentleman from 22 back there, contrary to my instructions, did raise his hand. I have in my hand a prop. It's a 25-cent piece. You can buy 1.5 gallons of gasoline with this quarter. Last year, I reported you could buy 1 gallon of gas with this quarter. Right now, using this quarter, the price of gas is 18 cents a gallon. The price of commodities has not risen. The number of units of currency, this fiat currency that the government just prints off as fast as they can get the printing press to run, is what has caused a devaluation and an increase in prices. We are chasing our tail with trying to fund jobs. We keep raising the minimum wage. We still can't find enough workers. We're in this competition for jobs and materials and everything else. We need to have the ability in the near future to be able to protect ourselves against further devaluation of the dollar. I urge you to vote green on this bill. Thank you.
Further debate on the motion. Gentleman from
28.
28, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate against the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of this body, I was kind of chuckling as I was listening to the debate, and I thought I better stand up and I had a good weekend a couple of weeks ago. I had the privilege to go out and help my son pick out an engagement ring. I can remember when my grandpa used to go out and buy diamonds, and he'd invest his money in cash in diamonds. Felt like they were stable. He says, oh, they're just as good as gold or better. Well, needless to say, as I was shopping around, depending on which store you went in, the man-made diamonds are now more expensive than the mined diamonds. They call them man-made and mined diamonds. When I bought my engagement ring, a cubic zirconian, which was a man-made diamond, was worthless. This future that we're looking at, the same thing could happen with gold. They've already can crystallize, and I saw them on the auction the other day. You can buy a crystallized piece of silver that they've made in the lab. My concern is if we put this in code and they start investing in gold, they're going to come up the same way to make gold just like they do silver now. And or the man-made diamonds, rubies, sapphires, they're all man-made. And we'll get there. Anyway, I'm in red light on this. Thank you.
Further debate on the motion. Gentleman 26.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the good lady from 33 yield to a question when she gets done with her phone call?
Good ladies on the, would the good lady from 33 yield to a question from the gentleman 26?
Mr. Speaker, absolutely maybe.
Good answer from the good lady. Good gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good lady. The gentleman from 31 raised a point that there is storage costs associated with gold. Do you have any idea what the potential storage cost we would be looking at would be if we were to invest the full 7.5%?
Lady 33.
Mr. Speaker, good gentleman. I was just trying to get an exact figure on that because I was just told it's minimal. And to kind of put it in perspective, if you had $100 million, that would take up the space of like a garbage can bucket. It doesn't take up that much space. It's not that much to ship. I think that it's a little bit of a misdirection. I'm trying to get a number of 20 bases. It's minimal, but I'm trying to get a dollar figure with that right now.
Gentleman 26.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hopefully, as she continues to research, she can give us an answer in her close.
For debate on the motion. Hearing none. Good gentleman 25.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Debate the motion.
Gentleman has the floor.
I was a banker and a financial advisor for 40 years in my career, and the one thing, and I've been in government for about 30 years. The problem I have with the idea that we invest our government funds in gold or silver is that we should be investing in things we know are safe, stable, consistent and can return some kind of immediately cash flow, like in the form of interest or dividends. You can look at this chart that was handed out, and between 1980, and I remember when gold spiked in 1980 and how everyone clamored to buy it, but it didn't recover until about 2000.
Okay, fascinating debate here. Sorry if I just blew out your speakers. As you can tell, some of these folks don't even use their microphones on the House floor there. We'll continue to monitor this debate. We've got a lot to get to today, so I want to make sure we get through it. Attorney Kate Hartley will be on with us closer to the top of the hour. But as we continue to watch that debate, it's fascinating that people are saying, that gold isn't secure or stable, and when the price of gold is tied to our ever fluctuating fiat currency, it's hard to argue that. Plus, our entire economies of the world have existed, including our own, have existed on a gold standard before we shifted over to the dollar. So, and my producer just told me here that nearly 20 nations are getting ready to just ditch the U.S. dollar in this year alone. So, and Clow wants to invest in the stock market apparently. So. Which I've got nothing against that too. I mean, there's plenty of great ways to make returns on your money, and that was just one of them. So to each his own, I guess. But moving on here, we wanted to get to some stuff today. There was a where's my rundown? There was a bill that was presented yesterday that we talked about briefly when when Representative Kingsley and Representative Scott came on at the end of the program, and we showed a little bit of it. It was to deal with the border crisis and to deal with immigration. And so this bill was presented yesterday, 753, House Bill 753. We've been able to look it over. We've been able to read it. There was a hearing this morning with some testimony. The ACLU showed up, the Kootenai County Sheriff showed up, there was questions back and forth, and so let's walk you through this, because this bill has some meat on its bones here, folks. This would put into statute the ability for law enforcement in this country to, if they come across somebody who's here illegally and meets all these different standards of illegality, that they would be arrested and processed and sent away. Something that we should be doing across the nation, but it's not happening. So if it happens in Idaho, that's what this bill seeks to do. To better explain the bill is Representative Jaron Crane, who presented the bill yesterday as an RS. It got printed. So let's listen to the opening of 753. This was this morning in the Senate State Affairs.
Chairman and members of the committee, for the record information, Representative Jaron Crane, District 12 in Nampa. So this is House Bill 753. I'm going to walk through a couple of the highlights, but before I get into the highlights of the bill, I want to address the updated fiscal note. If you look at the green sheet, you're going to see this legislation will require fiscal year 2024 supplemental appropriation of $250,000. and a $1 million fiscal year 2025 one-time appropriation to aid in county governments and enforcement costs. There's going to be enforcement costs for law enforcement associated with this legislation, but those costs cannot be reliably predicted at this point because of the uncertain nature and extent of the potential enforcement activities. When we look at the legislation, we're going to be creating a new crime, and that new crime is going to be known as illegal entry. There's going to be two different penalties for that. A first-time offense is going to be a misdemeanor. A second-time offense is going to be a felony. The way in which this will work, this will allow local law enforcement agents to go ahead and act as the border security of our state. So according to Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution, it is our right and it is our duty to protect the borders of this state when the federal government has failed its sovereignty and its responsibility to do so. So we have constitutional provision. When we look at, I had a conversation with a colleague this morning, and man, this bill's coming kind of late, isn't it? And I said, actually, yeah, you're right, and I will own that. What I've been looking for this entire session is across the United States, state legislatures to pass some kind of legislation that's going to get upheld in the Supreme Court. This just came in the last few weeks. Texas Senate Bill 4 was passed in the fall of last year in a special session, and it just had the Texas Supreme Court upheld it. And this bill is what we're going to use as the model here for Idaho. So recently, as I addressed in the introduction yesterday, there has been a stay by an appellate court in Texas on that. That doesn't mean this legislation is no longer constitutionally sound. So we were waiting for something to come forward that we could model after, and this seems to be the legislation that's going to do that. So we have also an interesting point is that there are three ports of entry in Idaho. There's one in Boise, there's one in Eastport, Idaho, and there's one in Port Hill, Idaho. So we have an issue at the Canadian border from northern Idaho where people are coming in that border, as well as we have the southern border issue. So the goal of this legislation is to close down the borders, use our law enforcement that's already in place. These guys know how and what to do. This allows them to ask some questions that they need to ask to find out if someone is here as an illegal alien. You'll see the definition of alien on page 1, and then be able to process accordingly. They then go before a magistrate, and the magistrate's going to ask them, would you like to go ahead and leave, or are you going to stay? And if they stay and this happens again, they're going to be facing a felony. If they leave, they're going to be a misdemeanor, and then they would be tried if they came back in as a re-entry. And you'll see that on pages 2 and 3, the part about re-entry. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for a question.
Thank you. Are there questions? Representative Barbieri.
Okay, so as we mentioned, the hearing went on. We have some clips from some other folks here that we want to get through. One of them being Sheriff Robert Norris from Kootenai County, my county to be exact. And he appeared via Zoom, I believe, and offered up his perspective and support of this bill, and then goes through some questions, some very relevant, interesting questions about what's going on and what they're facing at the law enforcement level. So let's listen to Sheriff Norris here.
All right, my name is Robert Norris. I'm the elected sheriff of Kootenai County, Idaho, and I am begging the legislature to support this bill. I am begging you to give county sheriffs more tools that we can address this illegal immigration. Point of clarification, I think there was a little bit of confusion on Mr. Barbieri's question. We will not contact individuals without probable cause to seek identification. That's a point of clarification that I believe that was unclear. Our southern border is out of control. 99% of my fentanyl can be traced to the southern border. We already passed a fentanyl bill. I'm asking you to support this bill. The cost of doing nothing on illegal immigration will be many times greater than the unknown costs in this bill, period. I promise you. I've seen the trailer, the movie, and the sequel, and it's not good. Illegal immigration has hidden taxes on all of us in every infrastructure that we have, from schools to jails to prisons, medical facilities. It is a hidden tax on every single one of us. So we need more tools to address this problem, and I encourage you to support this bill and vote yes.
Thank you, Sheriff. Are there questions for the Sheriff? Representative Alfieri from Northern Idaho has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff Norris, good morning. Thank you for testifying. I wondered if you could talk about the impact of illegal immigration in Kootenai County.
And Sheriff, I apologize. Representative Scott corrected me. It's North Idaho, not Northern Idaho. So apologize for that.
We will forgive him for that transgression. What kind of an impact are we seeing in Kootenai County with illegal immigration, Sheriff?
We are seeing an impact. My foreign national inmate population has quadrupled. We now need translators. We used to need translators for our field personnel and our jail personnel maybe once every 4 months. We're now seeing it once a week. So we are starting to see the impacts of it. Now, some people might say, well, that's not a significant impact, but I promise you, we need to get a handle on this, and we need to protect our borders, and we need to make it comfortable for people who come here illegally and very uncomfortable for people who have come here illegally. I'm very much in support of the H-1, B1, B2 programs that the federal government has. We have many employers that take advantage of that, but we need more tools in our toolbox against illegal immigration.
Thank you.
Representative Gannon has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Sheriff Norris, are you speaking, is the Idaho Sheriff's Association endorsing this bill?
Well, we have not had an opportunity because of the lateness in the session. So I know I have spoken to many sheriffs and many sheriffs support it, but we have not had a opportunity as a body, as an association, to take a stance and to take a vote on this.
Follow up? Thank you. And Mr. Chairman and Sheriff Norris, have you, what have your discussions been with our our congressional representatives from Idaho? And do they feel they're going to be able to do something about this, or what?
Sheriff?
Oh, no. Our federal contingency does not believe that under this current administration, they're going to be doing anything. But here's what I'm doing with my legislators is that we need more tools in the toolbox, and we need to strengthen our laws on forged documents such as driver's license, birth certificates, any forged documents that are likely being used by people who come here illegally. And we need to shore up some of those other areas also. And I'm in constant conversation with our legislators on doing that.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Sheriff Norris, the Congress did just pass a $1.4 trillion budget. And I'm just wondering what reasons, if there have been any discussions with our congressional representatives as to why they could pass a $1.4 trillion budget, but they can't address immigration reform.
Sheriff?
Well, I know there's a lot of politics at the federal level. It doesn't cost anything to institute a remain in Mexico policy, period.
And that was a hard question, Sheriff.
Okay. Any further questions, Representative? Seeing none. Sheriff, thank you for being here today. Appreciate it.
Okay, very good. So a lot of good information there, especially when it comes to how much, how many foreign nationals, as he put it, have quadrupled that are sitting in his in the jails there. So very, very good information coming from there, and this is a much needed bill. It sounds like, but of course it's not without its detractors. I don't know if you saw during Jaron Crane's opening, there was a few folks behind him sitting there who were texting furiously and quite animated at times. Those folks are from the ACLU. The ACLU Idaho, and the big spokesperson for the ACLU had a few minutes to share their thoughts. I think it's important to always make sure that we're listening to the arguments that the left brings on these very common sense issues, and because you have to understand their mindset. We have to understand what they're trying to convey, so that you have more sound arguments to push back on some of the nonsense that they like to bring forward. So with that, let's listen to a few minutes here with our good representative from the ACLU.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee. I'm Julianne Donnelly-Zool, representing the ACLU of Idaho, in strong opposition to HB 753. For 3 reasons, I'm going to speak about the impacts to humanity, all the people who are your constituents, who are residents of the state of Idaho. I'm going to talk a little bit about the text of the bill, and I'm going to contest the sponsor's characterization of it. The descriptions that you gave are candidly not quite accurate to the text of the bill itself.
Hold on. Yep. Just a second. Let me pause your timer here. Representative Palmer.
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to be politely object to what you just did. You need to the committee, not to the representative sitting next to you. I'm just trying to.
Sure.
I know it's not easy, but in this sensitive position, we need to be careful.
Yep. Keep your remarks to the bill, and I'm not going to start your timer for a while because you lost a little bit of time there. So go ahead.
All right. I will also be speaking to the state of the law.
Okay.
So first, on humanity. People who are here in the state of Idaho are human beings. If you recall, a few months ago, there was a disastrous accident at the airport where people who were working very hard to maintain the infrastructure of our community died in the collapse of a hangar. The people who died in that collapse were gentlemen from Guatemala. They were here providing a need that we had. They had families that depend on them, and by working in a high-risk position, they lost their lives for it. This is not uncommon. Also, in the collapse of the Baltimore Bridge just a few days ago, other workers lost their lives. They were construction workers who were working through the night to fill the potholes on that bridge. They were from Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Mexico. These are all individuals that are contributing positively to our communities, families with children. On the textual interpretation of the bill, on page 1, line 31, it does say, a person who is an alien commits an offense if the person enters or attempts to enter this state, Idaho. There is no other state that we are talking about, directly from a foreign nation. So while it has been described by the sponsor that this bill would apply to people who are of unauthorized status all across the state, that's simply not complete or accurate or matching of the text. I would also say that, noting the time.
I'll give you a couple
Excuse me,
more
Mr. Chair.
seconds.
On the law from the Fifth Circuit, which is hardly a bastion of liberal thinking, it is one of the most cautious and careful and conservative courts in the country. They recently held, citing 7 Supreme Court decisions, that power to control immigration is exclusively a federal power. This is not going to survive litigation. Thank you.
They always throw in at the end there that you're going to get sued. This isn't going to pass litigation. They always threaten lawsuits. It's incredible, right? Just as Jaron Crane opened up the segment there to say that, when the federal government is failing, it's actually in the Constitution that it's up to the states to pick up the mantle there and protect its sovereignty, protect our people. Another of note, I don't know if she unintentionally wanted to do this or not, but the fact that she pointed out 2 or 3 different disasters, construction site disasters that were happening. I won't go there. It was interesting. Representative Achilles tried to ask some questions during this, our good Democrat friend there. Let's play that clip real quick before we adjourn for this segment.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Crane, so I got a chance this morning to review the original Texas bill on which you mirrored this. So the definitions are the same as the Texas bill. All the wording around illegal entry from a foreign nation is the same as the Texas bill. But you omitted, I think, an important part of the Texas bill, which is 5B01, which prohibits a peace officer from enforcing this law in schools, churches, synagogues, temples, etc. Do you think it's okay to enforce this legislation in a church?
Representative Crane.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Achilles, when I talked to LSO, that is already an Idaho statute, so that's been omitted because that's Idaho statute currently.
Okay.
Is there a
further
reference to
questions?
it? Sorry, follow up,
Need to
Mr.
go
Chairman.
through the
if I may?
chair, Representative.
I will. Thank you.
I know this is sensitive, and it got
Not
emotional.
sensitive. I'm just trying to understand the law, Mr. Chairman. So could I follow up?
Chair's not going to recognize you. We're going to move on to public testimony. Next up will be...
Yikes. Okay, moving on to public testimony there. Fascinating to have that. I mean, these guys, they work hard. They try and get their ducks in a row, and good on Jaron Crane for addressing that, and also looking to other states for solutions. So that bill eventually did pass committee. It will head to the floor. It's late in the session, so it'll probably be. I don't know. Maybe it'll be debated tomorrow. Tomorrow's Good Friday. I don't know if they're going to take the day off for Good Friday tomorrow, but looks like we're definitely not wrapping up this week, and we'll be back next week. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have our guests join us and talk about some First Amendment issues. We'll be right back.
Surplus, which is not a surplus, it's an overcharging of the taxpayers.
There's a saying in Idaho, Esto Perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
Okay, welcome back. Matt Edwards here. The House is still debating Senate Bill 1314 as amended. This would put some of our reserve cash into gold and silver. So that debate continues onward. So we will definitely keep you updated as to how that vote turns out if we're still on the air. I want to bring in here attorney Kate Hartley joins us. She has been a good friend of the show here. She was also our only live guest so far that we've had on the show. Actually, I take that back. When we went to Boise, I had Brian Ullman live, but you were by far the best of the bunch so far. So welcome, Ms. Hartley. I wanted to go through a lot of the updates here on some of these bills having to do with the First Amendment, because a lot of them aren't getting passed. In fact, some of the ones that I sent you that I wanted to kind of cover are just lingering and not being addressed. So it makes me wonder, is Idaho a First Amendment state? Do we love the First Amendment here or not? And so I wanted to get your take on some of this. What has been your overall sort of reaction to everything going on, specifically with the First Amendment issue here in Idaho so far?
Thanks for having me again, Matt. It's very disappointing to see some of what I would consider, I think most people in Idaho would consider no-brainers as far as bills that would protect our individual rights or allow us to celebrate our own viewpoints in a non-offensive manner. It has been disappointing to see so much pushback against them, really from a number of different angles, and like you said, it's just dying in certain committees. And obviously I'm not a politician to know all the background on that, but it is certainly disappointing that it's taken that route and gives people like me, less tools to help protect Idaho citizens.
Yeah, and I think one of those tools is one of the arguments that we keep seeing repeated is that this will bankrupt an agency, or this will bankrupt the state, or it's too harsh of a penalty and we can't have these penalties. But I always like to push back on that, because I don't think the penalties are harsh enough, because if they were, then maybe people who work for the government wouldn't be restricting people's rights and violating their rights from the top all the way on down. I mean, in your experience, if you had to argue this, has a First Amendment violation ever bankrupted a government agency anywhere across this country? I don't know if you know every case, but I would think that would have made headlines.
Certainly not that I know of. And like you, this argument is very frustrating, because, it's a slap in the face to individual rights. The government is already very well protected, right? They have a lot of funding, they have a lot of resources, they have a lot of employees. The individual who has potentially been aggrieved does not have resources like that. They don't have that protection. And so that is where the First Amendment or other state laws that mirror the First Amendment come into play, to protect the individual from the government in certain situations like this. And yeah, to your point, in light of the amount of money the government, generally speaking, has, these cases are a drop in the bucket. And that's if they're won by the individual. But I think that the key thing that is frustrating is, and I want people to know this, the government is already very well protected. And these rights should be to protect individuals and not the government.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the key point right there. If I could take away anything, it's like these rights are here to protect the people, not the government. And there's plenty of people that keep getting elected that are sitting there wanting to defend the government. And I think next year when a lot of these bills come back, because I'm sure some of them hopefully will if these folks get reelected, is they need to push back on that argument that this is going to somehow bankrupt the library or the school or the government or whatever agency, and say, you know what, you can't use that argument anymore. Show me any time that has ever happened. And if you can't, then we got to move on. Okay, so let's get specific then. House Bill 517, which I believe is the one which gives standing to bring a case against the state within Idaho, so without going outside of Idaho and having to bring a case in federal court. Walk us through a little. I know we've had you on several times to talk about this, but we get new viewers all the time. Not everybody's watching every episode like you and I do. But walk us through a little bit of where this bill. What you know of this bill, because it passed committee, it was on the floor, and then it got brought back into committee. And I know that you've been following this one very, very closely. You may have even been around when it was being drafted. What can you share about this bill and the status and what we think is we need to do here?
Yes. So in general, this bill would provide an Idaho statute that would allow for a civil action under the Idaho Constitution. So it would mirror what we already have in federal law. We have a federal statute that allows us to sue for a constitutional violation under the US Constitution, but we don't have an analogous statute like that in Idaho. And so this bill specifically doesn't target the entire state constitution. It only addresses the two different clauses for free speech and free exercise of religion, so that if an aggrieved citizen of Idaho who's undergone a free speech violation or a free exercise of religion violation would have a state law remedy under our Constitution. And our Constitution says that we have these rights, but really there's no remedy to pursue if these rights have been violated. So that's kind of the background on the bill. I think it would be a great thing, again, for individual rights for people in our state, and to have more options and more strategy potentially for someone who is going to file a lawsuit like this.
Yeah. And real quickly, when this was being debated in committee, Representative Joe Alfieri, I think we have a clip. Let's play that clip real quick of Representative Joe Alfieri talking about how this has affected real people, and this was one of your clients. So let's listen to Representative Alfieri.
Madam Chair, I think in discussing this, it's important to go back to the spark that ignited this fire here and got Senator Taves going on this. This is a freedom of speech issue. We have freedom of speech by the U.S. Constitution. We have freedom of speech guaranteed under the Idaho Constitution. But under the Idaho Constitution, there's no redress to that. So here's the example. A young man in Kellogg said something, and he was barred from his high school ceremony, his graduation. And a gentleman showed up in protest of that, a gentleman who was employed by the school district, and he was fired from his job. And that young man was removed from the job that he had applied for and had been approved for as well. And there was no redress for them, except in federal court, which of course takes forever to get through. This addresses that problem. You need a mechanism. If there's a law and if there's a violation of the law, you need a mechanism for the person who's aggrieved to be made whole again. And that is what this does. Simple as that.
Yeah, it was simple as that, and you represented both of those examples, those folks in there, and I know one of those cases was settled, and the other is still pending. It's still ongoing.
Correct.
Yeah. And it's in federal court. So how long do you expect this to to take?
A long time, potentially. It
Right.
can take a long time. And yeah, that was very well said by Joe Alfieri. There's a lot that goes into making strategic decisions about where and how to file a lawsuit, right? And so again, this would provide a tool for people to utilize the best court, depending on their specific situation and the specific facts of their case. And we don't have that, in this situation. And so that was very well said, I think, by Representative Alfieri. And again, we don't have the right if we don't have a remedy, right? And so these quote unquote rights that we have under the Idaho Constitution, do we actually have them if there's no remedy that flows from them? And so that's truly what this bill is about, and it would give just people better options, better strategy in filing lawsuits.
Yeah. Real quick, do other states have passed similar legislation like this, or have remedies in other states, you think?
In varying degrees, yes.
Okay.
So it's not like a completely new idea. Again, there are some states that have maybe not exactly like this. And again, this bill obviously targets only 2 areas of the Constitution. But yes, there are similar concepts in other states, even though they look different than this.
Right. Okay, great. All right. Well, like I said, I don't think they're gonna. This it was on the floor, then it got pulled back into committee, so maybe there's some rewriting that needs to be done. Was there anything in the bill that you would change to make it more enticing, except removing penalties? We don't want to do that.
Exactly. The push, like you already mentioned, so much of the pushback was we need to protect the government. We need to protect the government, and we need to make these changes to protect the government. And I think some of the changes that were requested would be neutral, meaning it wouldn't destroy the bill or make the bill weaker. And so I think some of those changes would be reasonable changes to make. Obviously, that's the decision of the sponsors of it.
Okay.
And so, hopefully this or something similar to it will be attempted again next year. That would be certainly my hope. And make some of those, neutral changes, as I would call them, to still provide a remedy and hopefully make some other people happy as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess speaking of protecting the government, the other bill that seems to be stuck is House Bill 538, which is this compelled speech, which would protect government employees from being forced to, I've been saying, being forced to lie or speak against their conscience when they are being told that they need to use somebody's preferred pronoun or title or name or something that seems antithetical to science and grammar and all sorts of reasons why you wouldn't want to confuse people. This bill, it did pass the House, and it's now sitting in Senate State Affairs Committee, being ignored. We had thought that maybe perhaps it would have been brought forward, but they're focused on other things at the moment, which are completely ridiculous. Bring us up to speed on this bill and what it seeks to protect when it does come to people, government employees, teachers, staff, law enforcement, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, this is a great bill. We really like this bill, and we have seen the effects of what this bill is seeking to protect in our state and all over the country. And what it is saying is that a government entity cannot force a government employee to use preferred pronouns if that conflicts with the government employee's religious beliefs or moral beliefs. And this is something called compelled speech, where the government should not be able to force an individual to say something that they disagree with, that violates their faith, violates their conscience. And the basis for this bill is very well founded in solid U.S. Supreme Court case law. Compelled speech has been called demeaning by the Supreme Court, and it is very clearly established that the government cannot force speech. And so that's exactly what this bill addresses. I think it's a great bill. I can attest to the fact that this is a problem in our state and in our country. And it's should be like like many of these, this should be a no-brainer. But
it really should be. I mean, if anybody studies literature or watches Star Trek, there's a great from Orwell from 1984. There was a great episode of Star Trek Next Generation where the captain was being forced to say that 2 + 2 = 5. Or maybe that was in 1984. But there was a correlation that I want to get to, which is the state was trying to tell you that you needed to believe in a lie. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just that you were to say 2 + 2 = 5. You actually had to believe it. And all that, in my estimation, all that starts with something that this bill is trying to stop, which is no. You must say that person is a man, and eventually it's going to be no. You must believe that person is a man, and then we're just down that road. And so the work the work that you do is so important. And I don't want to keep putting all this burden on you, but what you're doing is so important. And what people need to do is back your organization, back people who are fighting these, writing these bills, and really putting your foot down and electing good people and supporting good people, so we can get rid of this nonsense. Okay. So thank you. A couple of the other things, I really want to get to the traditional family. I want to end with that so we can go out on a high note here, because we don't need a bill just to do that. So we'll get to that in a second. But I do want to ask you about something, a bill that I know you may not know exactly what this bill was doing, but there was a bill that was going to ban the advertisement of, it would ban companies from advertising illegal activities or illegal products in the state of Idaho. So I think that the example would be a Washington-based, marijuana vendor couldn't put up a billboard on the other side of the border advertising their products because marijuana is not legal over here. So when it didn't pass, it got failed, and there was a lot of free speech discussion about it. But there was also, it seemed like it was targeting certain companies, and it was very confusing. And the way that I feel like the folks were saying that the way the bill was written, it could have enveloped a ton of other things. So all that aside, that bill specifically aside, the interesting question to me was, should companies or people be allowed to advertise illegal activity? Is that something that's protected under the First Amendment?
It's a good question. In general, no. Advertising illegal activity is not protected. Like you said, and I have not read the bill, so I cannot speak specifically to the language. But based on what you're saying, it could have language that is vague or overbroad, which could bring up First Amendment free speech concerns, that it would be prohibiting other speech that is protected. Again, this is conjecture, but that is a common issue, and that's why the drafting needs to be very careful with these types of things. But in a very general manner, that is not protected to advertise illegal activity. Right.
Okay. All right. Well, let's take a. Will you mind? We're going to take a short break, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about traditional family, and then we good. Are we okay with that? Great.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
The dictionary defines a pledge as something that you give as a sign that you'll keep a promise. As Idahoans, that's what we're looking for in our elected leaders. A sign that they'll keep their word. Talk is cheap, and so are political promises, hidden agendas, and special interests. This is why we created the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge, affirming the values Idahoans have been living by for over 100 years. Inspired by the only two documents everyone has agreed to live by. So when an Idaho legislator signs our pledge, inviting voters to publicly hold them accountable, that's what we call political integrity. The pledge restores trust and honesty between voters and their legislators. It means protecting our shared values and ensuring your voice is heard in Boise. And that is priceless. Thank your legislator for having the political courage to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge. And if they haven't, it's time to ask why.
Okay, welcome back. Just briefly, Senate Bill 1314 on the gold and silver issue has passed the House, 36-33. So that's good news there. That bill will head off to the governor. We'll see if he vetoes it or not. Very contentious issue there in the House. Okay. Miss Kate Hartley is with us from the Pacific Justice Institute, and I know that she is also a part of this great sort of movement that we want to try to get a hold of here in Idaho, which is the Traditional Family Act. There was a resolution that has been circling the state capitol that would recognize the value and celebrate the importance of traditional families. And so this resolution appears to just be stuck on the Senate side, and it won't see any more light of day. But that doesn't mean that we can't celebrate this to begin with. And so here it is, tradfam.org. And Ms. Hartley, please walk us through this and what you hope that this movement does and what it's all about.
Yeah, the purpose of this resolution is to provide a better platform to celebrate the traditional family. And it runs from Mother's Day to Father's Day, and each week celebrating a different portion of the family. And as you said, it passed overwhelmingly in the House and just got stuck in Senate State Affairs. And so, look, as far as I know, it's not going to be heard in Senate State Affairs, which is very disappointing. But as you said, that shouldn't stop us from having these celebrations anyway. And so the purpose of this is really for each individual community to take a hold of this and have whatever type of celebration they want during this time frame, and to just provide a platform for people who believe in the traditional family, believe it is best, and have that viewpoint and the positive outcomes that flow from traditional families. And this is something that is being suppressed in current culture, and it is labeled as all kinds of negative things. And the statistics don't support that. They support that the traditional family does provide a lot of positive outcomes compared to non-traditional families. So that's the purpose. I would imagine we'll try again next year on this, but in the meantime, there's, as you said, celebrate anyway and get this out there, and don't just feel suppressed if you believe in the traditional family. It's been a difficult thing in this country and in this state, but that's what we're trying to work on here.
Yeah, and there was some fantastic arguments that were made during the debate on this on the floor as well as in committee. There was a feeling that even in presenting this resolution, you could sense the attack, that it was that you were feeling just because and then once again, we're here in Idaho, where everybody would have thought that something like this would have sailed through, and yet when it gets to the Senate State Affairs over there, it sits there, and because people feel like it's offensive when in all reality, I mean, people are offended every day. I'm offended every day by things that I see out in our culture or things that just happen. And what offends me may not offend you, but we have to go through it. I mean, we got people shouting names at each other, people calling each other horrible things online in real life. And so whenever there's an opportunity to say, hey, let's celebrate something good, and it gets shot down like this, it just feels so wrong. In your work, and you've met a lot of people, you meet a lot of different folks who are, especially in the free speech world. How did we get here? How did we get to this point where we get so offended that we have to take legal action against just being offended? I mean, you see that, right? You see people I'm sure there's people that you would agree with that get offended by what they see, and they beg you to take their case, and you have to explain to them that offense isn't a defense.
Exactly. I think that's just a common narrative, that if something is offensive, that, that gives you a right to shut down their speech. And obviously that's not legal. And it's amazing. Like you said, the narrative on this specific issue was just, phenomenal to watch. Just the negative, gut punches that we were taking. I think if anything, it proves our point, how badly we need something like this, because it is being attacked. And people are saying the traditional family is offensive. It's just unbelievable that we are here. And I watched a testifier say that the resolution actually violates the First Amendment because it's promoting a religion, and this is where we're at, and it's frightening. There's just a huge lack of knowledge on these issues. And of course, I see that firsthand all the time. But I guess my encouragement to everyone is, you are a citizen of this state and this country. You should know what your rights are and be able to articulate them to others as well, and take back this narrative that on all these issues that is just absolutely incorrect. And to answer your question, how did we get here? I don't know if I can answer that, but just a lot of lies, being repeated and repeated to the point where a lot of people believe them, and then they repeat them again. So
yeah.
Know the truth, know the law, know what your rights are. I think that will help. A lot of people just don't know, and they give in because they don't know.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Very true. All right. Well, if everybody out there, if you're committed to fighting for the truth, knowing the truth and defending the truth and all sorts of things that have to do with truth, first you got to pray, and then you got to go check out the Pacific Justice Institute and find out all the stuff that you can learn and their resources and ways to support them. Here's your website. Kate, please tell us how to get to this website and how else to follow your work.
Yes, thanks, Matt. So our website is pji.org, and there's a lot of free resources there. You can also request legal assistance there. And if you're in Idaho, everything will be directed to me. And I'm happy to talk to anyone about anything, whether it is you actually have a legal problem or you just want to learn more. Please feel free to reach out.
Fantastic. All right, Kate. Well, happy Easter to you and your family, and we will check in with you, especially if one of these bills do magically reappear. We want to get your perspective on it. So,
thank you, Matt. You too. Have a great weekend.
Right. Thank you. All right, folks. We're nearing the bottom of the hour here, where we're getting ready to sign off. The House is. Are they still going over there? What are they doing over at the House? They like I said, they passed that 1314, the gold and silver bill. I'm going to make a prediction that bill, let's see, does it get vetoed? It didn't pass with a veto-proof majority. So all the governor has to do, if he really doesn't want it and he wants to take the side of the Main Street Caucus, would be to veto that bill. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the bill we see vetoed. All right, folks. Thanks to Kate Hartley for joining us. Tradfam.org. Even though that resolution's not passing, there's no reason why you can't celebrate Mother's Day through Father's Day, each one of those individual weeks. IdahoSignal.com is where you can support the program. Send us a message. Send us some love. Make sure you share the content. Get this stuff out there, folks. We have seen a big spike in our followership over on the Rumble channel and on X, as we have been getting the word out to follow Citizens Alliance of Idaho and Idaho Signal. So please do that. We will be back tomorrow on Good Friday. It's also my birthday. Good Friday. Birthday. Good day. All right, folks. We will see you tomorrow. Have a great Thursday.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.